treat. Robert Kirkman himself is joining us for a spoiler discussion of Invincible season 1. I know you've already watched the first episode, the last episode of the season, because nobody can wait to see how this ends. In fact, I couldn't wait so much that after I watched the first 3 episodes, I went out and bought every single trade. Comixology was having a sale, and I read 14 years of comics in like 2 weeks. It's really good.
I'm always worried that it's not going to hold up when people do that, because it's like when you do it over many, many years, there are some plot threads where you're like, wait a minute, did we do that right? I don't know. And then people are like, I read it in a weekend. And I'm like, well, maybe it all just runs together and it works anyway. I don't know.
I can tell you it works. I felt like the Matrix when they download something into your brain, because there's just so much that's in it. But it was incredible. And, I have to say, the comic is very bloody. Right? It's like really, really, shocking, but it was even more visceral to see it to see it in action, especially Mark and his father in this final battle that we have in this episode. And you made it even darker, by the way, than the comic. I was like when he holds him up to the subway, I was like, that's horrifically inspired.
Yeah, well, maybe we crossed the line here and there, but I don't know. First of all, I will say that you can never underestimate how much being able to hear things accentuates them. It's enough to, you see the blood moving and you see different things and you're like, ooh, this is horrific. But then when you add the sounds of, bone crushing and bodies ripping and things, I think that's really the thing that pushes it over the edge. But when it came to that fight in the finale, I feel like there's a big relationship between, the terror and horror that you feel from seeing those violent actions and the emotion that comes from it. I think that when you heighten one, it heightens the other. And so while it may seem like we're like, oh, let's make this even more disgusting and off-putting, it is hopefully done to result in, like, when Nolan is standing over Mark and he's been beaten up and you have that emotional sequence, you have been moved into a headspace where you've seen these terrible things and you're kind of feeling them the same way that Mark feels them. And so hopefully it makes that interaction a little bit more real and a little bit more of a gut punch. So it's all to, amp up the drama. We're trying to make the audience feel things as much as possible.
I was a whirlwind of emotion. I was like, that's his dad. That's his son. I mean, it was incredible. It was very, very good. Adult-oriented animation is still pretty new to Western audiences, very big in the East for a long time.
Yeah.
But what do you think of tackling these adult scenes and themes in animation? How do you like working in the space?
Well, I love to, startle people. I think that I've talked a lot in interviews about how I feel like my entire career is built upon my experience of watching Transformers the movie for the first time in theaters. Seeing my favorite Transformer toys get viciously murdered unexpectedly, and how that gave me this really sinking and numb feeling that I've been chasing ever since, and every piece of entertainment I consume and everything that I do. And you say adult animation is somewhat new, to American audiences who aren't familiar with anime, and I say, great. Then they're going to be really shaken by some of the things that we're showing them in this series, because they're not going to be expecting it and they're not used to experiencing it. And so it puts us in that place where we can surprise people more and shock people more and provide them with entertainment that is going to give them a new experience. I think that we live in this media landscape where there's a billion different shows, and I think 800 million of them are kind of giving you the same thing. And so I want to try and make sure that everything I do is in that, 10 to 20% that's, trying to push the envelope and do something that's as unexpected as possible.
Oh, you are. That's a good point. Because on one hand, it's like this, Saturday morning cartoon animation, but then it's like the most adult superhero story I think we've ever seen.
Yeah, that was absolutely by design. Like when we were developing the show, Corey Walker, who was very present and involved in the show, and I were like, we want it to feel like you're watching, the X-Men animated series.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden Wolverine cuts a guy's head off and you're like, that doesn't compute. Like that's not supposed to happen. And I think that like visually it trains your brain to expect a certain thing. And then when you get something completely different, it heightens that impact.
It's even more incredible. And this is, you're very faithful to your comic, but it's not a straight adaptation. You've made, in fact, a lot of changes. And two of my favorites are giving Debbie a more active role in the story. I really like that a lot. And William being gay from the start instead of realizing it much later on in the story. How did those two changes come about?
Well, I mean, I think the Debbie change, look, frankly, not a lot of women in the early issues of the comic. Debbie is present, but Debbie doesn't really have a lot to do in the comic book. The comic book was done by two 20-year-old white males in the early 2000s. And so when it came time to adapt this series, there's a better awareness of a lot of different things, I'm not going to go into it all, but,
but I think that growth is really incredible. No, but I'm saying, you could have been like, that's the way I did it. That's what everybody wants to see, but I think that you were like, oh, hey, I can make this even better. And I think
not
that
a bad person.
We're a genius. No, I love Debbie. I gotta say, I got this vibe. I mean, don't spoil it, but I'm hoping she works for Cecil. I'm like, offer her a job. Every time Cecil shows up after, towards the end, I'm like, offer Debbie a job. Offer Debbie a job. She's great. I love her a lot. And speaking of Debbie,
Sandra Oh was a huge part of that too, because not only did we have to expand the role just so that, the character had more to do, once we cast Sandra Oh, it was like, oh shit. Like
you're not going to bench her.
Yeah. We have to give this woman things to do. We have to write a role that is worthy of her performance. And, that was a monumental task.
Well, speaking of today's landscape, how does it feel to put out a superhero show starring Stephen Yeun and Sandra Oh? It's so cool.
No, it feels great. I mean, look, I've loved Steven since, we first met on the set of Walking Dead.
You discovered him.
Well, sure. But
I tell it.
But yeah, I mean, he's been great. And so I've always wanted to do, literally anything that I could do with him. And so having him involved in this project was great. And, it's awesome to work with him.
Now, speaking of crowded landscapes, there are a lot of takes on evil Superman, although I can't get enough evil Superman stories. But I was wondering, where did you get the idea for Omni-Man and the Viltrumites, whose real origin we learn in the finale?
I mean, it's superhero Darth Vader. I mean, that's pretty much all we're doing. It all goes back to Star Wars. Oh, by the way, your father is evil. Like that's a classic trope.
Even Darth Vader would be like, damn.
Maybe
I just cut off his hand.
But I think that was the main inspiration. I mean, it was late in the pitch process. Corey Walker and I were developing the series and we're pitching it to Image, and we had done a few test pages, and I had written a few documents of, this is Invincible is Mark Grayson, and he's growing up under the shadow of his father. And, he's entering into this superhero world, and his dad's this great superhero. And that was literally it. Like, that was the whole concept. And while I was putting the pitch together for Image, I was like, there needs to be a something else. Like, there needs to be something on top of this that expands this concept and gives it more of a hook to make it, more enticing to audiences. And so, I think the last paragraph of the pitch is like, oh, by the way, he's evil and he's here to take over the planet. But that was that
wasn't even part of that was a last minute addition.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Like, it was originally just supposed to be about this father and son being superheroes together.
I love it.
But yeah, and so, it was something that was just added to add a little bit of spice and flavor that, ended up being the, core of the whole series.
Oh, it's phenomenal. As I know, since I've read all 14 years of the comic. But also, I got to ask, why the mustache? I think that's hilarious that all Viltrumites have this mustache. I think it's really funny.
So my dad growing up always had that mustache. And so that's, to me, that's the dad mustache. Dads have that mustache. And so, I thought, he looks like a dad if he has that mustache.
But it's a whole planet of dads then.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's great.
And then Corey and I have a dumb sense of humor, and Ryan too. I got to mention Ryan Otley, who was a huge part of the series. And so, when we were introducing the planet Viltrum in the early issues, I can't remember which one of us was like, oh, you know what? They should all have Nolan's mustache. That would be hilarious. And I feel like there was even like a couple seconds where we were like, well, do the women have mustaches too? I mean, it is alien. And then the great thing about Invincible, though, is that just, the stuff that we have the most fun with is that we arbitrarily are like, this is the dad mustache. Nolan has this mustache. And then later on, we're like, the whole planet has these mustaches. This is the Viltrum mustache, like whatever. And then later on, we introduce this Thetis character who has a beard and is later revealed to be a Viltrumite. And we introduce this concept of the Tulok pull, which is where a Viltrumite who is in disguise reveals that he is a Viltrumite by ripping his beard off.
Like, it's the mustache. You're like,
and so it's just like, it's a cascading effect of the most stupid ideas that are worked into continuity that really just bring us joy while we're working on the series.
I have to say, you take it so seriously and the story's so fascinating. It seems brilliant, but I was just curious. I was just like, why the mustache? So that's a great reason. I also, speaking of payoffs, without spoilers, I do have to ask you, Nolan's question at the end of the fight, where he asks Mark, he says, what will you have in 500 years? Mm-hmm. When I read the series, I was blown away with the payoff for that line.
Okay.
Did you know you were going to end Invincible the way that you do when you wrote that line? No. Oh, wow. So what a callback. You're like a genius.
I don't want to spoil things for anybody who hasn't read it or anything, but that's a function of, I had a vague notion of how I would like to end things, but I think Vince Gilligan is famous for talking about this stuff and crediting the writer's room and just talking about, like, they did things in Breaking Bad where they would have, a machine gun in Walt's trunk, and then they'd be like, I don't know, like, how does that get there? Why is that there? Like, what's going on? And the act of figuring all that out and working that out is the fun part of writing. And so, like, as we got to the end of Invincible, like, I was like, I wish there was some kind of like line of dialogue or something that we could dig out that we could turn into a big thing. And you just kind of do the work and you're like, oh, that would be great, that works. And it's kind of by the seat of your pants. It's I feel like audiences want it to be planned, like, oh no, you had to have this plan.
When he wrote it, you were like
16 years
sticky for 14 years later.
Or else it's not valid. But
I think it's even cooler that you went back and you reached back and you were like, what can I pull? I think it shows that don't always just look forward, but look backwards too, which I think is really neat. I think that's fantastic. Now, you're moving real fast through this story, but you have a very nice montage. Oh, you have a lot to cover. You have a wonderful montage for teases for season 2 at the very end. What are some of the story elements, again, without spoilers, that you're the most excited about potentially exploring in a second season?
Well, I don't know. I mean, all of that stuff that's revealed in the finale. I'm excited to see the Flaxons again. I'm excited for Battle Beast. I think that I'll go ahead and say there's more than likely going to be more Battle Beast in this show than there was in the comic.
Oh, really?
I wouldn't say a ton. It's not going to be the Battle Beast show, but there's like 30, 40 episode or issue stretches where you don't see or hear from Battle Beast in any way. I'm probably not going to go that long. I enjoy working with Michael Dorn far too much. We'll definitely be doing a little bit more with him. And you talk about how quickly we're going through the material. I'm really excited about doing new things.
Will you do new things?
But I think that, we're going to adapt the comics, and all the big stuff from the 144 issue run will hopefully work its way into the, series if we get to go, the 950 seasons or whatever we have to do. But like along the way, I really like the idea of, bringing in different storylines that I maybe considered doing and didn't do in the comic book series and coming up with, new things entirely, along the way. I mean, there's like a really cool Damien Darkblood plot that I had where, I've always loved the superhero trope of like superheroes going to hell. That happens in Marvel Comics and DC Comics all the time. And we never got around to doing it in Invincible, but I had always planned for there to be some adventure where Invincible has to go to hell, to like do something with Damien Darkblood. And I think, we're hopefully going to be able to do that in the show. So there will be new things like that that'll get worked in, and, it'll be a lot of fun.
Oh, that's so exciting. And characters, I think, will also evolve like Debbie. I can't wait to see what happens to Debbie. So that's great. Oh, so congratulations. I hope you have many seasons because I want to watch them.
Me too.
Thank you so much. Congrats.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's great talking to you.